In this episode, we take a deeper look at You Fool.
Hi, welcome to Button Shy Deep Dive, where we go through games from the Button Shy catalog, discuss them, and see what's interesting about them. I'm Ian. I'm the narrative lead at Button Shy Games.
I'm Jason Tagmire, Oh my god, what do I say? I started Button Shy Games.
I started Button Shy Games. Well, you started Button Shy Games, but I think that's what you say. And today we're talking about an older game called You Fool. For those who are not familiar with You Fool is a bluffing and negotiation game for 3 to 4 players, centered around various clowns forming a human pyramid as part of their circus performance. Across roughly 30 minutes, players must jostle for position to avoid being left out of this show-stopping moment. You Fool was designed by Dr. Wictz and illustrated by Hong An Nguyen. It was published in 2017 as part of the Button Shy Select line. As of this recording on October 8th, 2024, You Fool is unranked on Board Game Geek with an average rating of 6.3. And I think it's worth, before we get into this one, because You Fool is an older game.
Oh, yeah.
It's a rarer game. A lot of people probably have never seen it. There's not a lot of coverage of it. So I just want to talk really briefly about You Fool as a game. And in You Fool, there is a circus pyramid, kind of a big tent setup. Each player is a clown. You get out of the clown car, and then you move through the circus. And it has an interesting mechanic where there's a lead clown every turn. And then there's these movement cards. Each other clown gets to look at a movement card and put it back. The lead clown does not see them, but they have to assign a movement card to each clown without seeing it at all. But every other clown can talk about what they saw, including lying about it. So there's this really interesting kind of positional game where the person handing out the movement cards does not know what's going on. Each other clown has part of the picture, and they're all kind of trying to get the best spot. It's a really, really interesting game. And we'll talk more about it as we go, but I wanted to just kind of set that standard for people who have never seen it. Because the truth is, I've only played it once.
A key point is that you're shuffling to get to the top of this human pyramid of clowns, and at the end of the game, the person on the top wins and everybody else loses.
Yes.
So it's a big... it's not one versus many. What would we call that? It's just everybody loses but one. There's only one winner, and it's all at once, so it's not like player elimination or anything like that. It's just one winner, which a few games I've seen over time have done that. But that's kind of the big hook on this one is you're pushing your way to that top of that pyramid through this deduction and bluffing and negotiation, and only one person will win at the end.
Yeah. Now I'm trying to remember because
sorry, not one winner.
Yeah, there's one loser,
which is so much worse,
which is
much harsher, and they're called the Fool.
And they are the Fool. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's 3 positions on the pyramid. It's 1, 2, 3, and then whoever's at that bottom at the end is the loser.
Yeah, and
the sole loser.
Not only do they lose, but a pie is smashed into their face. This is, I want to say briefly, this is an amazing rule book, which just features so many great lines. But of those lines, one of my favorites is when a clown is smacked off the top of the pyramid with the ball, there's like a big ball, like a ball that people throw at each other, and the pie clock is ticked down to pi, that player is the Fool, and the lead clown smashes the pie into the Fool's face, which is just a bonkers sentence to put into a rule book, and I love it so much. It's so weird.
Absolutely.
Which kind of leads us into our boil it down to 5 words, and I think I've done it in 2. This is something that we do every week. We try and get the essence of the game in 5 words. I like to go for as few as possible. I think I've got it in 2. You ready?
Yeah, I want you to go first.
Okay. This one involves a lot. You have to hear it. Clowns? Weird.
That's 1,000% accurate. Okay, so I'm going to just spell this out. The things that I want to say in it is chaos, one loser. So maybe like chaotic silliness with one loser.
Yeah, chaotic silliness with
something
one,
like that.
With one fool.
With one fool, yeah.
Yeah, chaotic tomfoolery.
With
one loser.
That's good. That's better.
We
should actually print that.
I did actually have a slightly longer version, a 5-word version.
Okay.
But I was so happy with the 2 words that I almost didn't want to ruin it. But I'll share this one. Clowns, unpacking, attacking, and stacking.
It's so good. It's so good.
I was like, that should be, if you could even sell this game, that would be the 5-word encapsulation.
Wow.
Hi, I'm Austin Smokowitz.
I'm Aaron Hanswitz, and together we are Dr.
Wictz. We are talking to you today, and we are talking to you today about our 2017 Button Shy game, You Fool.
One of the most productive dinner arcades we've ever had. We're just chilling out at Unpub in Baltimore with Jason, Charlie Hoops, Keith Ferguson, and we just wanted a game where there was no winner, but there was definitely a loser.
It's the classic story of we sit down for dinner, we begin by drawing out what we're thinking about on a napkin. Jason pulls out a deck of blank cards, because he always has that on him.
And by that night, we had a working prototype. We were at Unpub playing with Paul, Keith, Mike from the Party Gamecast, and we were just laughing, and lying to each other's face about what was going on.
And once we get back to Unpub and we're just playtesting it with people who were not at the dinner, Jason wanders on by and hears people laughing and having a great time at the table, and that's what he's like, okay, it doesn't just work with them, it works with other people too.
We have a full rule book, and we have a game. The game doesn't change that much from what we have that night to the final version. I mean, there are some changes and important changes, but they're small to the relevant restriction. The game itself, the core of the game was operating, working within 1 or 2 hours of dinner being done.
This is an interesting game. One of the reasons it's interesting, and something I kind of want to talk briefly about, is that it is one of the most sort of sought after, hard to find items in the Button Shy catalog. And the reason for that is that it was part of the Button Shy Select line, which was a series of games. I think there were 3 or 4 that were
something like that,
hand numbered and ultra limited. So I believe there's only 250 copies of You Fool.
I have copy number 97 of 250 in my hand.
Nice. So this is one that comes up over and over and over again. People are always looking for it. It's hard to find. I want to talk a little bit. This isn't specific about You Fool, but it is related to it because this one is sort of iconic. What was the genesis of that Select line? Like, how did you decide to start doing that?
So I'm just going to pull something up as I talk. There was like a little press release blog thing about it. Here it is, Button Shy Select Series. So I'll talk about it, or I'll read it and then talk about it because I don't want to be incorrect. Button Shy Select are limited, short-run, hand-numbered wallet games selected by us for a select few of you. Here's a quick history leading up to this announcement. One of the original Button Shy core concepts was that making tiny games allowed us to take chances that other publishers simply couldn't take. Our risk was small, therefore we could make a game that wasn't going to skyrocket on Kickstarter. But Kickstarter's become harder and harder over the years as campaigns became more glossy, polished, lower priced, and loaded with stretch goals. Some years, some of that is impossible for us, especially with some of the quirkier, non-standard games that we like to feature from time to time. In spending so much of our focus on the marketing end, I started to miss where we do something fun and low stress, where making the game is more important than making add-on materials. So we came up with Button Shy Select. So that's the gist of it, and written a little better than I probably would have said. But back then, this was probably 2017, 2018?
2017 is when YouFool came out.
Okay, so it was probably closer to 2016 when we started figuring this all out. 2016, 2017. Kickstarter was becoming more and more of a thing. Kickstarter was becoming more and more of there was like the way that Kickstarter works. Stretch goals were just massive at that point, and the quirkier, sillier stuff, party games, any of that stuff was just kind of failing as like bigger minis games and just loaded games were kind of taking over. We would release some games like direct to consumer at the time through our club, through our Board Game of the Month club, or whatever, direct on our website. But we wanted to be able to make a few games that were just really taking chances. So the ones that I know of were YouFool, which is 4-player only. There's a 3-player mode, but it's really like a 4-player game about clowns stacking with a single loser. Very hard sell right off the bat. There's 10 people are going to love that game, and a lot of people aren't. So came up to us. It was like the designers pitched it to us, and it's like, here's this game. They made it in like a day. It was crazy, like at Unpub. But it's like, we can not do this, or we could do it a different way. That was really our options, was like,
yeah,
this isn't going to work in our standard model, but maybe we can have this like secondary model that we could do this in. And, 1, get a designer's game out there. 2, find the small audience that would like that. And 3, not impact the other things that we're doing by kind of, sending out review copies, reaching, our 1,000 people that we might hit on a Kickstarter, or even at that time, probably half of that. But not allow those things that would stop this from happening to stop it. So make a separate line. We released this. We released Feet on the Ground, which is just a weird, puzzly, like, game that was sort of a sequel to Ahead in the Clouds, but plays nothing like it. So it had 3 strikes right there. Jeweler's Row, which was like a Bejeweled or whatever style video game on cards. It's just like a lot to look at on the table, super abstract, puzzly, but not puzzly in a way that something like Sprawlopolis is, where it kind of catches the wind of board gamers. It was kind of against that and had some little, like, not deduction, but you're kind of only following certain colors on other players, and that's how you score at the end. So it all was just like, these are going for a small crowd with like an odd concept that I don't think the masses would go for. YouFool being the oddest of all of those. And 250 seemed like a number that we could do at the time. It was a printable number for all of our components. Nowadays, I think we can't print under 1,000 cards with our current card stock. So it's just like, it couldn't happen today.
Right.
And that was it. And we promised, I say that we promised we were never going to make more. But I don't know if there's like a strict promise other than we're making 250. And like you said, it's very sought after, and it's because I've stuck to that. I feel like I think we released them on P&P, but I think for a physical release, I've always said we're never going to do it again. just to honor what we said we were doing. And I don't like when someone goes back on things like that. And then it makes everyone who got it the first time around feel a certain way, just to sell more or whatever. In this case, it would be to get it into more hands, which is great, but there's P&P out there, I believe. And it's honoring, what we said initially.
Yeah, which I think is really important, I mean, they're numbered for a reason, like...
Yeah, we could have a non-numbered edition, but we said 250, we're sticking with 250. Not to mention, it hasn't gotten any less weird in the 7 years since. It's still a weird game with a weird theme, with a weird player count, with a weird end game. It's no, clown games haven't become a thing.
Yeah.
4-player only games have not become a thing. In fact, it's the complete opposite now. It's even harder to sell.
Yeah. I think harder to sell. It is, I mean, we can joke about it being a little weird. It is a cool game. I mean, it really is. And
yeah, I've seen some so it's like, I would say it's almost like a convention game. So they designed it at a convention. It was like roaring at the convention with laughter and everything. Yes. And were some of those funnest sessions that I've ever kind of sat and watched or sat in on for any prototype of anything. Run by the designers who are very good at that and kind of shepherded the whole thing along, and it was super, super fun. And I'd almost say I don't think anybody that owns it has had as much fun as we did in that setting on that weekend, where it was just ripe and fresh and like everyone was up for it. Yeah. So, it's that kind of thing where if people could experience that, it's awesome. And maybe one day we could do it at a ShyCon event or something where we can really just kind of capture that magic again with the right crowd and the right game. But you have a bunch of people over to play board games and you're used to playing other stuff and you're like, let's play this.
Yeah.
I don't think you'll get that experience. It's a hard one to get outside of a convention where people are kind of up for anything. They have a whole bunch of days where they're not sacrificing a different game to play this one.
Yes.
You're just up to hang. And that's what this game is like perfect for. Which is, it's sort of a rarity, I guess.
Yeah, it is. And I mean, it's an interesting, like, immersive game. Not exactly the same. I did play it at the first ShyCon.
Oh, yeah.
Somebody brought it. And it was, I mean, it's a charming game. It's very, like, immersive. You can play and really get into it. It has that, like, programming element that I think really lends itself to, like, hilarious play. Almost every programming type game that I've ever played ends in total laughter because inevitably somebody
stuff happens
wanders off, and I think I can really see that appeal in the moment, especially if it's like brand new and everybody's just kind of into it. That's really a cool story that I think sums up the charm of You Fool. Which is that it's pretty silly. It's a silly concept, a silly game, but in a charming way.
Yeah, I agree.
Which is, I think, really cool.
I remember us taking the game to Origins, and at that time, Origins was still a media festival. There was a live stream from Golden Geek, a live stream from the Dice Tower Network. And we managed to wiggle ourselves into those live streams, demoing You Fool, and telling everyone, here is your chance now to pre-order it. I mean, it's not often, looking back at it, that not only just sneak on, but we were really giving financial advice to collectors.
To collectors.
Turn on that.
When we sat down to do that Dice Tower interview, it was a thing. It was really nice to be able to shake Z Garcia's hand as a designer and not just as a fan.
And that was for us really our first taste of interactive board game media, where it felt like we were supposed to be there. Interactive board game media. We had something that we might actually care about.
I did want to, drill in a little bit, because I think what you were talking about with the select line is really fascinating. That Kickstarter became very glossy, polished, bloated. Do you still feel that way in 2024?
Yes, I think so. I don't think we stopped doing stretch goals until considerably after this, probably a few years. But we could not have stopped doing stretch goals when we released Mint Julep. Like, stretch goals were such a factor.
Yeah.
And our stretch goals were always just one expansion. Well, maybe not always, but for a while, free expansion if we hit this limit, hit this number. It's completely false. We were printing that expansion anyway. Maybe we wouldn't have given it to people for free if we didn't hit that number. But if we didn't hit that number, we wouldn't have the audience to really be interested in that expansion later. So it's like, it's all just marketing. It's all just, and it's completely different. It used to be like back in the day, a stretch goal was, if we hit this number, $10,000, we're going to add a couple promo cards or whatever. And the whole concept of it was, we need every backer that's here, the 300 of you, to go tell all your friends about this campaign, so we can hit $10,000. If everybody collectively tells all their friends, we're going to get more backers. We're going to reward you and them with this new thing. And then keep doing that. It was always just a couple promos, maybe a small expansion or whatever, but it's gotten way different than that. Yeah. And it's so calculated. And I think it's so fake, where it's like, if we hit this number, we're going to upgrade our card stock. And this is coming from a printer that has a publisher that's got 10 games. None of them have a bad card stock. They will not print a game with bad card stock. Right. It's just so fake. And it's just a way to just hype people now. It's a way to make the campaign super bloated. And I fall for it. I mean, I back this games where it's like a bunch of free stuff. But I know that, like, if they made it and said it had all that stuff, it, like, I don't know. It's such a way to market a campaign now that I feel like, yes, we're still there, but with one key difference is it's acceptable to not do that. Yeah. I think back then, if you didn't have stretch goals, every comment was, where are the stretch goals? And it's just like, you just had to explain it. I haven't seen a where are the stretch goals comment in a long, long time. So I feel like it's acceptable not to do it. It still exists. Probably will always exist because it does work. Yeah. But I think it's just less expected nowadays. So other than that, Kickstarter it's quite different, I think. It's the little guy it's so much harder for a new publisher to find anybody. It's so much harder to compete with the big ones because they're so established. They have such a huge opening day because of previous campaigns or huge mailing lists, us included. Like, our opening day used to be about 30% of our funding for a game, and now it's closer to 50. Yeah. Or maybe opening 3 days, I think, is the calculation that I'm used to. Back in the day, there was more. We just have a bigger mailing list that we get more people coming on day one. But without that mailing list, it's like impossible. It's really hard to start. It's really hard to shine amongst the big glossier stuff. And there are ones that break through and ones that are successful with it. But I don't think that's gotten any easier in the last few years. The biggest thing that got easier is that people don't expect stretch goals anymore. Yeah. It's almost like there's a stretch goal campaign and then there's a campaign nowadays. A stretch goal campaign is just fueled on that and based on it, and you see it, you expect it. It's just going to be a fun 2 weeks or whatever. where you're getting new stuff every day and getting messages about it. But in the meantime, you probably would have been getting that stuff anyway.
Yeah.
You know, it's just it just would have been less fun, less interactive, less updates, less content, and just presented in a different way. It's just two different ways to sell board games. And I'm thankful that both work now.
Yeah. I think from what I see, it seems like there is that sort of two styles kind of fits everything. You know, there's these games that do like $1 million,
Yes.
you know, which to me is like absurd.
It
you
is.
know, that's like so unthinkable. And then there's the games that get like $5,000, you know, where it really is like, okay, this is maybe enough to make the game. But it is very like rags or riches. You know,
Yeah,
and I look at the rags, you know, that's my people.
Well, I tell
You
I
know?
tell new publishers, new designers that are running their own campaigns, like, don't just look at the ones that like super fun. Like,
Yes.
you can look at like a CMON campaign or whatever, Cool Mini or Not campaign. Look at it and say, here's everything that they do. I should do it. And it's like, no, they're on a
Nope.
different planet than you.
Yes, exactly.
So I tell them to look at ones that are figure out their funding goal. Look at games that just hit those goals and see what they did right, what you can do better. And then look at ones that just did a little above that. Look at ones that didn't hit their goal, but have a similar funding goal to you. And then look at one that did very well, but sort of unexpectedly. It just, you know, didn't do all that extra glossy stuff. So it's just like a couple that you can compare to, but really those big ones are very different. And if you try to do that, like, it could be super dangerous. It's just, you know, it's like, especially people who decide to do it like on the fly, which happens a lot, where it's like, oh, we're doing okay. How do we keep this going? Let's add something, which is going to add a year to our development and production, and just pretty much like kill it for our chances of our next game. So yeah, Kickstarter's wild. It's pretty vast. There's a lot of different ways that people can do things. But I kind of try to look at those ones that just do it right without loading up the page, and see what they did right, which is usually in like their like reach to fans and how much they've had people hyped before the game came out, more so than just promising thing after thing with every update, just to kind of keep things going, because it naturally will drop after you launch. Like, your launch day is always huge, and then just by the nature of it, everybody's looking at new campaigns and things like that.
Yeah. Well, and I think from what I understand, Kickstarter's ability to target potential backers, and, you know, get the word of mouth out about your campaign, has changed over the years and is more targeted, which can be really good for smaller publishers, but can also be dangerous because, you know, you're not necessarily building that audience yourself, and you're not necessarily able to count on Kickstarter doing that.
No, you can't count on it. It's basically propels off of what you do. So, you know, you have a really good first day. Everybody who has notifications for people they follow on there get a notification that this person backed it, and then more people back it based off of that, and that just keeps going, but it drops as it goes. If you don't have that initial first day, like, nothing kicks in.
Yeah.
Like Kickstarter's not going to just feature you randomly,
right,
and share you with all these things. You kind of work your way up these charts based off of success, and then work your way throughout networks based off of success. So it all requires a degree of success on your end, or at least like a solid first day, just to kind of kick it all off. And it's hard. That just takes time. Takes campaign after campaign of just building your network. And then people break that. And that's the one I worry about people looking at as like, this is my model. Is this one that did excellent? Yeah. And it's like, that should be part of your model, but not the whole of it or the majority of it.
Yes.
That's like the dream, and then there's a whole bunch of reality within, outside of that.
Yeah. And that, it is so tricky if you haven't gone through this process, if you're not familiar with it, where do you put your, trust? Is it, I can do as well as this one? Or is it, okay, prepare for the absolute worst and then hope for the best,
And then you look at Full as a game. We're going to sign this game. Let's compare it to some other campaigns, and it's uncomparable. Yeah. It's like, let's look at other clown games. No. Let's look at other 4-player only games. No. It's just like, there's nothing, and there was no way it could have ended up on Kickstarter. Outside of some, like, they do some interesting promotions, like here's like a make 100. They have that one where you can make 100 of something, and you're kind of featured in their make 100, and it makes sense. That would have made perfect sense. But for us, our mailing list was bigger than that. Our followers were bigger than that. Yeah. We make 100, and whether they like the theme or not, they're going to be mad at us that they can't get it.
Exactly.
Otherwise, they probably wouldn't have bought it. But if it's unavailable, people are going to be mad.
Yeah. Well, and
we're fortunate in that. I mean, there's some people who will struggle to get that 100. So
absolutely,
we're very fortunate in what we've built over 10 years of Kickstarter or whatever.
Well, and that's something I was going to kind of get to too. Is that 2017 is pre-Sprawlopolis, and we talked in an earlier episode about how Sprawlopolis is sort of a dividing point between old Button Shy and not new, but not old and new, but
different.
There was a change. There was a shift in trajectory, and I think that's sort of Fool comes right before that, and it's fascinating to think about the sort of select line. Which now you absolutely could not do. People would be furious. Even the slightly more limited games in the club.
We print 1,000 of those, and it gets through the club, and there's a little bit to go after that. If that, we might have actually passed that by now. But it's not. I think it's a problem on a whole bunch of ends. Like, it's a problem for our fans that can't get it. Like, it's just, it's limited, but not limited for a reason. Like, limited for like an event. Like, we'll do ShyCon and we'll make 150 of a game for that. But we try to make sure that it's not like a full wallet game. It's a bunch of little stuff. Sometimes it's stuff that we bring back or whatever, or just weird re-themes. So it's limited for that event. So it's different. Like, this is limited because it doesn't have a big audience.
Yes.
So reducing the potential audience is tricky where people want it. But yeah, we couldn't do it in any way right now. And those games that are 1,000, they can come back through reprint campaigns and things like that. But this one can't because it's said that it's 250. It's numbered. So I think nowadays it would be a little bit of a disservice to the fans. Well, a big disservice to the fans, a disservice to the designer that all their work stops at 250.
Yes.
Now they could take it back and get it published through somebody else or work on it and make it into something else. We're not like locking it down forever and on anything that small. But it is a bit of a disservice to them that here's the reach and it's done. Here's what you're going to get paid maximum, which may or may not be a concern for some people, but might be for others. But here's how many people are going to play your game maximum. Here's how many people are going to see your game maximum. So unless it's something that you made quickly in a day, like this one, or something that was an offshoot of something like, a weird re-theme that everyone else has the other's copy. Other than that, it's like a hard thing to exist. It's very difficult. If we were smaller, it would be easier. And if I don't know, there's not a lot of good reasons to limit things. in my opinion, other than an event, I think an event makes sense. I do like exclusivity. Like, people hate it in board games. Like, I love exclusive stuff. Feel like a sense of accomplishment when I get it. You know, especially if I get it through like the initial means. Like, here's an exclusive like Gen Con promo, and I got it at Gen Con. I feel accomplished.
Yeah.
I like that. A lot of board gamers don't. So exclusivity in board games is very hard to manage. Like, it's people say that if it's art only, I'm okay with it. If it has game content, I'm not. And to me, if it's art only, it's kind of boring. Like, I kind of want it to have game content. Like, that's what makes me want to chase it, is the game content.
Right.
So it's like what I want and what our fans want are completely at odds at that. And I try to respect that while dancing the edge a little bit here and there.
Yeah.
It's so tricky. So I don't think we could do it today.
No. Well, and even the few things that are pretty limited, and I say this as, you know, somebody who has worked on like postcard games, which are very limited, have a limited audience. There's not a lot, you know, like you mentioned about the designer saying like, you know, here's the 250 that we're going to print and there's nothing else coming. It is kind of like you make a game, you send it out, you know, however many people get it, and then some small fraction of that plays it.
Yes.
You never hear much about it. It just is kind of like, well, I did it and I sent it off into the
And there's no like wave 2 where it can get regenerated.
There's no future. It's just done.
And so we've tried to, over the years, remove all of that as much as possible. Because while I think it's cool for people to get something special, I think less of that is better. So now we're down to like once a year, we're doing like an exclusive package for the club, as opposed to like things every month that are exclusive. So I think it's just going to be more meaningful, more special, feel better about obtaining it. We're going to put more into it and feel more a certain way about it. I think less of that is good. And the designers are going to feel, I mean, even like, I was like, maybe I should design the things that are super limited just because I'm not insulting a different designer. Like, and it's, I guess it's not insulting if it's known up front, but but sometimes it's known up front, but there's still hope that that's not it.
Yeah.
And like, I think we've done enough to know the reality that that's usually it.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of like, you know, you send out 1,000 of something weird and small and 50 people play it and 15 people respond to it and 5 people love it.
Yeah.
It's really hard to print another 1,000.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's really hard to justify that in any way. So it's tricky. And there's a whole bunch of weird aspects to that. Like, those 1,000 people that got it weren't the 1,000 people that wanted it.
Yes.
So, like, let's just use an example. It's a dexterity game. Dexterity games have a very limited audience. Our club members or subscribers or whatever are getting a game no matter what. We send out that dexterity game. Half of them instantly are just like, I don't like dexterity.
Yeah.
So half of your copies are wasted. You know?
Right.
And then what happens is there might have been 500 other people out there that like dexterity games that would have picked it up, but they're not in that club. They're not at that event, whatever it is. It's just a very tricky method to release something that's unique in any way, and by nature of it being unique in some way is why it ended up in that release method.
Yeah.
So it's so hard.
Yeah.
But we're just reducing it. We're just doing as little as possible just to avoid those couple things that come along with it.
Yeah, and it's an interesting arc, because if you look at, you know, the original selects, you know, there's this kind of move to say, okay, we're going to make these things super limited, because we understand, and I think it's smart publishing to say, this is a cool thing, but it is not for everyone.
Yep.
There's probably there's more than 250 people that I think would enjoy You Fool.
Sure.
But it becomes a thing that those people can pursue or not pursue, rather than trying to sell 1,000, 2,000, 5,000 copies and not getting it to the people who really are passionate about it.
Yes, because out of that 250, we're going to have some super fans that are going to eat up some of those copies.
Yes, yeah.
Like at that point even, but like at this point. But I would say that we've done a few games in recent years that are kind of like these, but they got the full 1,000 game treatment, because that's our newer method. Was we're still going to try a couple weird things here and there.
Yeah.
But we have to print 1,000 of them. It was this big. It was this big is Milan, who's done a lot of other games with us, Rove and Battlecrest and everything, Numsters. But it was this big was his, it's just, you have two cards, there are fish on them, it's a head and tail, and you place them where you would like and see how many fish fit in between, and players have to guess, how many they can, how many fish fit in between this, and try to get it as close to exact as possible. Make it this wide. You can make it as wide as you want. You can make it real narrow. It's more points the wider. So, like, very specific audience to people who like to do measurements and guess them, which is like myself and Shigeru Miyamoto are the two people that are into that. If I remember correctly, I thought might have been him or someone else that worked at Nintendo that was really good at just telling someone how like the exact length of something.
Yeah.
Super fun. Like when you do like fun with family, fun with kids, but just like the audience of 10 people. Like that's the core audience of people who need that game. We printed 1,000 of them. Well, I know we still have some even after our club members got them, whether they wanted it or not. We kept doing that for a few years, just like we can release a weird game here and there because that's who we are. And now I don't think we can. And it's a interesting shift that I'm not in love with, but I am in love with at the same time. Like, I don't like having the little bit of trouble that comes along with it, but I don't like that our creative freedom has been sort of stripped down a little bit. Like, it's like better choices, better development, better knowledge of our audience, but also just can't really take a chance. I'm trying to think, like, in the last year, the things that we take chances on. It's so much fewer nowadays.
Well, and I think it's interesting because when I think of Button Shy, I think about a lot of unusual themes, unusual mechanics, things that, you say, oh, you can't possibly do that in 18 cards. So I don't think, like, it's not that you're only making these, we got to sell 10,000 copies. There's always going to be that sort of weird, offbeat, off-kilter, quirky element that I think makes the games more charming.
Sure.
But the really out there stuff becomes a little harder. And so I don't know that it's like it doesn't feel like a huge, it's not exactly a huge creative freedom being restricted. It is more shaping it in the right direction.
I think it's all been shaped better. And I think of like weird things that I see if we could put them out, and I think we have a larger group of people that would kind of talk me into some things, talk me out of things that I would have been into before.
Yeah.
Where it's like, no, that game, let's just use one for example, Universal Rule requires 30 tokens per player. Is that a good idea? It would be like, well, it's fun. I like it. It's a fun game. But yeah, I think we'd be talked out of a lot of those decisions nowadays. And we basically have a list of like 15 things where it's like, we don't want any games to have all of these.
Yes.
Which knocks out all the weird stuff immediately.
Yeah, it does.
So
it does limit a lot of
but
things.
it's just experience. Like, we've made those games. Those games were hard to sell, or those games were not great for the designers, or the games were required extra stuff or whatever. So it's all just kind of whittled down into this smaller pool of what we want, but somehow that smaller pool of what we want is still extremely varied.
Yeah.
And we're still surprised when we see new games. So if that were to fill up, then we'd probably open up some of those weird requirements and allow some stuff back in. But for now, it's kind of off limits for something with a. I think it's not even off limits for like a clown theme, and it's not off limits for a 4-player only game, although it might be. It's off limits for the combination of all those things.
Right.
It's like you can have one thing, but you can't have all. So like, trying to think of a recent example that has one thing that's getting through and out there, but the rest of it feels a little more conforming to what our audience would like.
Yeah. Well, we talked a little bit in the spaceship episode.
Sure.
Of that, how that one breaks a lot of your modern design rules, but still feels like it doesn't in a weird way. That it has these very complicated multi-use cards, but it all works together to
even like Battle Crest is one that it's an extra rule book, but everything else kind of fits or it's a 2-player fighting game. That's another thing that we just kind of avoid.
Yeah.
So there are ones that are breaking through. So we're not completely out of it.
No. And I don't think you ever will be. There's a certain level of like inbuilt quirkiness or, offbeat approach, that is part of the charm of Button Shy. And that is still being maintained even as the team grows, even as you have more experience and more knowledge, even as you're limiting some of these, odder items. This isn't a soulless, you're going to keep making these weird games. And it's so cool to hear, you talk about this sort of manifesto from 2016, 2017, and how much of that still applies, to the business today.
I am worried. Well, Jason hand wrote the numbers on all these Button Shy Select games. That was 250 copies for 3 games. That's 750 numbers. I don't want to think we gave him arthritis, but I'm not giving him arthritis. I'm sorry, everyone else. Some people on Board Game Geek really go out there and highlight what number they have each Button Shy Select game. Who has number 1? Who has number 250? Key numbers that just get value to some folks. And that just makes the whole Button Shy Select series its own little fun experiment. I'm confident that Jason's not going to hand number those things again. 750 copies of the hand number between the 3 games. I mean, Jason, was it worth it?
Really? Was it?
I mean, I enjoy it.
But speaking of the business today and, how you would change it, I am really curious because You Fool is a really cool game. I know you cannot reprint it, but if you were going to reprint it, what would you change? How would you update it to fit? Because it feels like it's so different.
So here's a little insider stuff that you might not even know of. Maybe you are. It's just we talk about a couple tiers of how we would update games if the opportunity comes up. So one tier is to tidy up the text and rules, like find anything that's just off or questioned and fix it up. The next tier is to, and there can be combinations of these. A separate tier is to get all new artwork. So for some reason the artwork didn't work, we're going to get new artwork. And another level of that is to get a new theme. So for You Fool, for example, let's just say like the clown art was okay. We just want better clown art. That's just getting new artwork. To be clear,
I love the clown art.
The artwork is amazing.
It's great.
So,
there's one sad clown that is just my absolute favorite.
Hold on, let me see if I can figure out which one. Is it the violin one?
Yeah.
It's so good.
It's amazing.
This one just looks so frisky. I just can't deal. They're so funny. But there's a level where it's just the art was okay, but it could have been better. So we upped the go. Then there's the level where the theme is the issue. We're going to re-theme it. We're not worried about rules. The game plays how we want. We're going to re-theme it. So that turns into, if we're re-theming it, potentially some rules, like going back to development, because the game could be a little tighter, could be better. It's a solid start, but never got a proper finish. Or we're re-theming it and we're changing this from clowns to dungeon crawling, and maybe it needs a little theme to mechanic integration. So something could change, not just the theme, but some of the way the game plays to feel more like a dungeon crawler. So we have that in place when we're looking at games that are older, where there were a bunch of rules issues, or the art didn't go over well, or whatever. And when it's time to bring that back, which level of that will take?
Right.
And generally, we've only done the first one, which is just like tidy up a little bit of text and rules questions. We haven't done a full re-theme. We might have, but we haven't really dove into this. But we're getting to the 10-year mark on some games. This is the 10 years of movie plots this year. So we have those opportunities that are coming up. We do these reprint campaigns, and a lot of games aren't even eligible for reprint campaigns just because the rules had so many questions that we couldn't comfortably just reprint it as is to our current audience, who is not going to be up for the effort needed to get that game to the table with, going on FAQ, going on Discord, going wherever, and just figuring it out. So that's something we have, going on in the back end. So You Fool, the theme has to change, 100%.
Yeah.
It can't be a clown game. So I think about it. You've got this pyramid. And I've thought about pyramids in two different ways. So top down or going this way.
Sure.
So going this way is almost could be something where you have a path and you're opening your options.
Okay.
And the bottom of the path is somebody who hasn't traveled, and these people have, which is one thing. And then the pyramid is sort of the opposite of that, going this way, where it's somebody who's made it to the top or whatever. But I think of Skulls of Sedlick as a game that uses the same shape, probably the same even grid, I think, at a player count, where, if you took Skulls of Sedlick and players had cards and they're playing them, and whichever ones end up at that bottom for whatever reason are eliminated. But I think I'd remove the elimination too. I love a moment where one player loses and everyone else wins. It's happened to me in Cosmic Encounter.
Yeah.
Cosmic Encounter has a thing where everyone just has a certain point value, and whenever someone hits, I believe, 5, the game's over and they win, and multiple people can hit 5 at once.
Yeah.
But we've all coordinated. So Marty, who does artwork and mail here and works for us, is the only loser. We've done that, I think, more than once, where it's how can we do this so we can all win except Marty? And it's such a great moment. But I just don't think that moment being in every game is anything like that moment happening once in every 50 games of Cosmic Encounter or whatever.
Right.
So I would kill that. I would just, it would change the entirety of the game. So, instead of clowns trying to get to the top of a pyramid, It's, the pyramid shifting and shuffling is kind of cool,
Mhm.
but I would figure out a way to change that theme and change the win condition as well. Change the player count as well. Like, it has to be 1 to 4 players and not 4 players.
Yeah, 4 players or 3 with a bot feels really different.
Yeah, it's just not possible. So it would be more of, I think the approach is like Camel Up does it, as well as like our game Mint Julep kind of does a little bit similar to Camel Up as well, which is where you're like betting on things as opposed to it being you. So the clowns moving around the thing, instead of you being one of them, they're the ones that you're betting on.
Mm-hmm.
Which I don't think we have enough components to kind of pull that off.
It'd be tough, yeah.
But, players, instead of being a clown, let's just go right to skulls instead. Like, instead of being the clowns, they're the skulls in the stack.
Yeah.
And instead of playing one, you're betting on them.
Sure.
And instead of them being static, they're moving around a little bit more. That gets us halfway to where it would be acceptable in 2024. And I don't know what else I would do. It's a completely different game at that point. But
it is, yeah.
If you kept the bluffing and deduction, which I think is the core of it, and that little program movement stuff, I think that stuff could survive now. That little bit of chaos with mitigation, it's not fitting in 18 cards, but that whole, I'm telling you what I want you to do with my cards, and I'm telling, I think even that's like a little bit of a older style of game by just a couple of years, just because we've skewed so far away from player, what do they call it? Like multiplayer solitaire. There's so many games that kind of fall into that model nowadays and are very successful, or with little interaction, that I think that being the core of it still has to go. But I don't know if it has to go or it needs to shift, because I think that could shift mechanically to something that you could do just without the human element so much, which is such a funny thing to say, in board games. It's we're trying to remove the human element. So I don't know. It's making a full new game, but they're the things that would have to go in order to do it, and find out how that interesting, chaotic programming could happen without the human element.
Yeah. Which, there are games, the more recent games, that have little bits and pieces of that, but nothing that has it all together. But, when I think about You Fool and changing it to a different game, it loses so much.
For sure. It's starting over. It's
it's not, it is a strange game by modern standards, but I find it so cool, unique, refreshing. It really stands out. And I think that's part of why people want to collect it, is not just the rarity, but also that it's who owns a clown game? No,
I love that we did it. I think it was a cool time for Button Shy. It was personally had so much fun with it. Those designers, they're great. I don't even know if their names outside of their Dr. Wictz is a pseudonym, or is that the right word? It's not their name. It's 2 designers working under one name, and I don't know if their names are public. It's really interesting. But just hanging with them and playing their games was such a core moment for Button Shy history, and I'm glad we did it. And to the 5 of you that love it, I'm glad you have it. And to the other 245 of you who don't, you should probably put it on eBay, because I've seen them go for a little bit.
Definitely. Message me directly after this podcast.
Do you have one?
I don't. No. I played it at ShyCon. Somebody brought it, and it was really cool. We played a couple of old games that day. That was one of the better ones, I think. Because it is it holds up. It's not, we've talked about how it's out of style, but it does hold up. The pieces are all there. It is, compared to some of the other ones in the Button Shy catalog that are maybe even a little bit, less polished, a little bit more out there. I think You Fool really held up. I enjoyed it. I had a good time with it. Once we figured out what to do, and like really, once you get into it and immersed in it, it's fun. You're messing with people, you're bluffing, you're trying to figure out who you can trust, and then it all ends in this like glorious, chaotic mess. Where everybody's getting bumped around, and you end up at the bottom, and you don't even know. like you had your move planned to go to the top, and it just all falls apart. I love that.
That's good. Yeah.
Do you have any one specific story related to You Fool that you think?
I don't know. So like, it's a game that came about very quickly, in a weekend at Unpub, which Unpub, if you don't know, is the Unpublished Game Conference or convention or whatever it is, which started out in. So I guess my story is just going to be, what is Unpub, right? Unpub started maybe 15 years ago in Delaware. And it was in a little VFW hall. I went the second year. Little VFW hall, maybe 20 designers. Each one gets a table and people come and play your games. I've met so many people through this, growing up making games. I would get a table, share my game. The coolest thing is, in the beginning, it was mostly just other designers playing your games. So you're getting really good discussions and you play the game and you sit and discuss it for a long time and have these just great conversations. And then as it got bigger, it became kind of the general public playing your games, where you were getting really good feedback that's not from a designer who's reshaping your entire game.
Right.
You're just kind of getting the core issues and all, but there's value in both. And I adore that time I spent with the other designers, ripping apart my game, then ripping apart their game. So I went the second year and many years since, and it got bigger and bigger each year. Went from a VFW to a school cafeteria to a big convention hall. At one point I met the You Fool guys there and played. They had a horse racing game, which was really cool. It was betting and loud, just like You Fool. It was just a whole loud experience where they would run it, and I couldn't even imagine anybody else running it, just the way it would go. And it was just so much fun. And lots of Button Shy designers met there over the years, going way back, TC Petty, who made Handsome and went on to do all kinds of great other games.
Yeah.
That was the first person I met at any Unpub so many years ago. So it was super cool. It's still going. It's in March. It's a cool convention. If you're a designer, you just get a table for 4 hours. People come sit down and play your games. One year, Matt Leacock sat down and played my game with me, just me and him, and then gave me feedback at the end. And I was just nice to meet you, Mr. Pandemic. But no, it's just a super cool event. And You Fool guys, I don't know if they're still going. I know they're somewhat local to. It's a mid East Coast convention, usually Delaware, Maryland. I think those guys are still somewhat local. But it's just, you'll just bump into so many old school Button Shy people there, even newer people. Elizabeth Hargrave was guest of honor recently. It's just a cool spot. And I miss those old days where we would have the time and energy to make a game right there.
Right.
Now it's a whole thing. You've got people, you don't have downtime at your table where nobody's there and nothing to do. So it is quite different, but the nighttime hangs are no different. It's still the same little getting into trouble with making silly games.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. And then I seem to recall from when we first started organizing ShyCon that experience was a little bit what you wanted to bring. I know you said a lot of times, we can do this small, intimate gathering where everybody gets to talk to each other, and it's not overwhelming.
Although it is overwhelming for us. Like, I feel like I talked to a million people and never got a conversation in or a game.
Oh,
but
yeah.
I think everybody else is having the experience that we want them to have.
Which is what matters, right?
Exactly.
That's the important part. Last year I said I would go to every table, and I made it to one table before somebody needed help teaching a game. And then I never got back to it.
It's like, how do you play insert weird game here, like You Fool?
Yeah.
And then I gotta, like, let me read the rules, let me figure this out, let me message Dr. Wictz because I don't remember. That's what it becomes. But yeah, Unpub was hugely inspirational for that, with those early days of almost like more talking than playing.
Yeah.
And it just created people that are, lifelong friends, and ShyCon's kind of does that as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, there's people that I see every year, and we may not talk directly in between,
Yeah.
But as soon as I see them, it's, oh, good to see you. Let's, let's talk, let's play something. Let's,
let's bust out the game that nobody's played.
Yeah. Well, and that's it. I mean, truly the first year of ShyCon was so special to me. In part because it was the first one and it was exciting, and but also because I got to play like 3 or 4 games that I would never have ever had a chance to play.
Yeah.
It was like You Fool, Fever Chill, Trolling for Trouble. Like that's a really cool day on top of everything else.
Yeah. That day does not happen at any other time.
No, absolutely
no other
not.
Players are up for that.
No, absolutely not. And and I don't have the games. I don't have You Fool or Fever Chill. And it's as somebody who likes not just what Button Shy is doing now, but to see the history of the company, to see the history of how what came before and how it has metamorphosed while still keeping the same feel. That experience is super cool, and You Fool is such a defining part of that. It just really feels like, I don't know, a really cool, unusual, but still viable, still fun experience. So it's a neat one.
So because You Fool was a Button Shy select, only 250 copies were made, which means that right now, as far as a market price goes, you're saying you were just taking a look at it recently.
So no, I get a kick when I look at the resale value of You Fool. It was a Button Shy game, and even right now, I just checked before we were recording. On Board Game Geek right now, a copy of a Button Shy 18 card game, they want $65. Well, we have a game called Robotech Reconstruction. It is a coin-style game. That game goes for $45. So an 18-card game, it's selling more than a full coin-style board game. Just blows my mind. But see that in the community, right? You see on the Button Shy Discord, if you remember, when a copy of You becomes available, people just start swarming towards it.
Yeah, I had a friend who got the game when it was new, and 2 years ago, when it was only like $45 for a copy, he goes, "Hey, would you be offended if I sell my copy of the game?" And I go, "No, it's okay. I have 2 copies myself. We can still play it whenever we want." Go ahead.
Now, in the unlikely event that somebody has played only You Fool, that is the only Button Shy game that they have ever played, what do you recommend for them next?
So assuming they played it and they're still lingering around.
Right. What other clown game do you have for them?
No, I mean, you just mentioned it. Trolling for Trouble is probably the next one for a few reasons. I have 2, actually.
Okay.
But Trolling for Trouble is equally rare. Like, it wasn't limited to 250, but it just was not available.
Yeah.
Which we'll get into at some point, but essentially it came in a bunch of parts, separate cards, and the wallet came at the end, and nobody has all the cards, nobody has the wallet. We have like 1,000 of the wallets just sitting here with nothing to do with them, because we don't have any of the cards.
It also came out at the start of the pandemic, or around
it was
there.
a whole thing.
So it came out in multiple parts and needed 5 people to play.
Requires a large group. Is super weird, but it is like bluffing and deduction in a similar way. but also very different in just special abilities and the way that the game plays. But it shares a lot of the oddities.
Yeah.
And a game that doesn't share the oddities, but shares a little bit of the like interaction would be Universal Rule. And I pick Universal Rule. It shares a little bit of the oddities. It's the one I mentioned, has 30 tokens or coins per player. But it's like a 4X, which is just a 4X space like battle game, which 4X is, I don't remember what all the X's are, but extract,
explore,
expand.
I think that's
so
it.
The whole idea of it is you're going to different planets, getting resources, converting them to money, using stuff to battle another player and taking over their planets and destroying them. But it does have those big moments of I'm going in on this planet, who's coming in on me with me, and it's just like super interactive and in a way that we don't have a lot of games that do that. So that's probably the most like normal and most accessible coin issue, token issue aside, game in our library that does that. And there's probably something else, but that one kind of stuck out in the beginning to me.
Yeah, I think those are two really solid options. And it is so tricky because You Fool is not, it does not map to any other game. I mean,
Wow.
Truly, there's, whatever you recommend is going to be kind of just off. I think those are two great ones. I debated a couple, but I think what I'm
curious if one is in your couple. If one game comes up in that.
Yeah, well, I'll say the ones that I was debating.
Yeah.
So I thought about Ugly Griffin Inn because it has that programming.
Sure.
Fishing Lessons also has it, but Ugly Griffin Inn has the programming that goes horribly awry type vibe. A little bit. So that was one. Cunning Folk is another one that's kind of an, older, a little bit woollier, has more of that player interaction. I could even see a case for like Battle Crest, which is a weird one to compare to, but it has the positional element in a very different way, but it also has that like playing mind games with your opponent, competitive kind of feel.
Sure.
But ultimately the one I settled on is Smoke and Mirrors.
Oh, interesting.
Because it has that like bluffing piece of it. And it's just, I think that Smoke and Mirrors is, I think, a hidden gem in the Button Shy catalog.
I've heard you say that before.
Of the many great games. Yeah, I say it all the time. I think it's a great game. It's super clean, super, simple to learn, but has so much going on where you're trying to figure out what other people are doing. You never know if somebody's bluffing. And there's that like real tense, like, ooh, should I challenge this? I feel like I should, but I don't want to. And so I think that to me maps the closest.
That's cool.
And it also has kind of a weird theme of magicians doing tricks to one up each other, which is, so I think that's where I would end up.
So the one that you didn't say that I thought might come up, and I don't think it's a terrible choice, was Mint Julep. And the reason is because of the order of things and the way that things work out is some little bit of chaos can happen. And, you can go from thinking you're in the first place to going all the way to last place. But the second reason is because it's the same artist. And I don't know if anybody knows that.
Oh, wow.
Mint Julep it was the second game. We went back to the same artist. Or no, was it the opposite way around? Oh my God, I don't remember. But love the art for that as well.
Yeah. So, for sure.
That's the two times we've worked with that artist. And great work both times.
That now that you say it, that makes perfect sense. I love the art for Mint Julep. I love the art for You Fool. And they have a similar feel in some ways.
I think they were a children's book illustrator. Was
kidding.
What we were kind of looking for both. Like take that, but shift the tone a hair.
Yeah, it has. That's interesting because it doesn't feel like I would think a kid's book, but it feels like an older kid's book.
Exactly.
You know, like where the tales are a little bit weirder, and you know, the tone is like not as bright and colorful and over the top. That's an interesting.
It's a little sad.
There's a little sad. There's and what's great about You Fool is that it's this like nice circus and everything. It's not run down in any way or anything like that. But you do have this feeling for some reason of like, this is a second-rate circus. Like there's nothing that really says it or implies it. But in my head, I'm just like, they're really trying to make the most of these clowns because everybody else has left. They've got like one elephant and then these clowns.
I love it. It's such a good one.
It is. Well, thank you so much for talking about You Fool with me. It's been fun as always, and we'll talk to you again later.
See ya.